All right. So in the last video, I was talking about how the most beautiful thing, sometimes the deepest thing, is like a sunset, especially if that sunset is over an area where you're having activity, like productive activity, and you're serving people or you have love for people in a community and in an area. That sunset will be very beautiful. But that sunset is also not entirely separate from the breathing of all the people in that area and in the earth in general. And that, so sometimes when we're looking at a sunset, we're actually looking at spirit. You can appreciate that the sunset is spirit. And sometimes I'll see like a very incredible sunset, like on a Friday night or like a Saturday night, or especially like a Friday night sometimes. And this is so I'm saying this channel is called Pet Theories, so I have to add some pet theories. So I made this entire present series just to set up a couple pet theories that I'm going to come up with. So you appreciate spirit, right? So like according to Grand Street Taj Tariq Bey, um, when you say spirit, you're referring to breath, and that there's no implications or understanding of spirit outside of breath, or completely separate from considerations of breath. And then from that standpoint, breathing is very spiritual, because all that we do in life, so long as we exist, we are breathing. But also we have to our breathing. There's a lot of differences in breathing, and it informs our actual mind and thoughts, and what we can and can't do is a function of breathing. But also from that standpoint, you could say that what we do and think affects our breathing and the breathing that we put back out. So when you see an atmosphere, you're seeing a lot of spirit, because you're seeing a lot of breath. That's spirit. You could almost say that's our collective spirit. Would be the sunrise or the sunset over a community or a town or a city. You could almost say that's the spirit of the city right there, and you wouldn't be wrong to say that that's the spirit, and that might be part of what's so beautiful about a sunset. There's a video that changed my life by the late great Kevin Samuels. He had a video called Men Should Lead with Their Wallet. I'm talking spiritual, and there you go, a statement like that. But he has some really cool things about there that are just simply about being a professional and a clean man with style and tact. And in there, it starts off with like he had like some soft music playing, and there's like a picture of a sunset. It wasn't even a sunset; it was just a picture of a sunset over like a city, like a screensaver. And he let the video. It took him a while to get started with that, and that was so beautiful. Just his vibe and his vibe and his aesthetic and his subject matter, what he was getting ready to talk about with that picture of like a sunset over a city. But a sunset over a city is very spiritual, and I think that's because it's made out of air and spirit. But sometimes I think like you see a very beautiful sunset, right? And so think about all the people who may or may not be getting ready to get born that night. Like as though all the dating that's going on that night, all the lovers that's going on that night, all the loving that's going on that night. That loving is going to require some work, some breathing. So you're going to have some people breathing hard that night. That night with that beautiful sunset like that, where the air is a little you would have to say the atmosphere is a little bit different on a beautiful sunset than other circumstances, or the sunset wouldn't look like that. So you can say there's something in the air that night. A lot of people are going to be breathing in that air, working with that air. There might be some beautiful people that get born because of the work that gets done that night with all that breathing. Was that beautiful sunset not this beautiful people getting ready to come into life and coming into being born, is what was in the sunset that night. So that's just a little bit of a pet theory. But sunsets are beautiful, especially because they're collective. But the greater message that I wanted to come with is that, and I was also making those statements about the religious statements, just to say that I have an appreciation for Sundays in terms of the collective prayer that goes on a Sunday, and the worship that goes on a Sunday, as maybe influencing the atmosphere. Whether or not we're from the same faith, tradition, or background, the atmosphere would have to be different, just in terms of the prayer and the faith that would be on a Sunday in the region where I'm at, as people worship on Sundays. And I'm just appreciating that collectively. But what I wanted to say is that if you appreciate our feet, like our feet are very, very sensitive. A lot of people, you wouldn't appreciate how sensitive your feet are under normal circumstances, but your feet are entirely sensitive. Some people would say that might have to do with balance, because balance is way more sophisticated and sublime than we can normally appreciate, and it might take that level of sensitivity to be to be balanced. But yet nothing in nature exists without a purpose and also some form of advantage. So that our feet can be hurt, that our feet are that sensitive, there would have to be a strong reason for us to have feet like that, in order to have a purpose in terms of surviving. But just being able to get our feet hurt, that wouldn't be an advantage. But what I think is that I think that some of what animals respect about humans, like especially like dogs, it is because of the way that humans think differently, but it's also how humans think differently, and it's not just because of our brain. So if you think, now I made the other video talking about we have different levels of consciousness in our body. I was talking about think on your feet, weak in the knees, fall in love, Elvis shaking his hips, think with this or that member that gets you in trouble. You got a pair of these that helps you in this situation. This and that makes your blood hot. You feel something in your spine, like you have a sensation in your spine, or you feel something in your spine about something someone said. Your heart, your gut, your throat, your tongue, your eyes. Your eyes are falling in love. You're too cerebral. Your mind. There's all different tiers of consciousness, but those are, you can maybe appreciate those as a pole. Different poles of consciousness, and there's no electricity without polarity. There's no consciousness without electricity. You could reason. So I'll make a different video about electricity and consciousness if I get an opportunity. But things exist on a pole, so you actually need to ground that. So as much activity goes on in your head, some people appreciate that in electrical terms. You would need to ground that because electricity needs to be grounded. So maybe our feet and the sensitivity of our feet are grounding to the earth. And that's what animals respect about us. But that might also be what distinguishes us from animals. It had actually been our feet in the first place beyond our mind, because our feet are unique among animals, I think, just in terms of sensitivity. And so that might be what is profound about a human is actually the feet. And actually more of your thinking might come from your feet, or be possible because of your feet. And that might not only be your physical foot as you appreciate it, because some people say, well, what about people who've had a member amputated, such as a foot? Now, if you see someone who has had a foot amputated, there is actually a difference in them where, in a certain sense, you feel like compelled, like that's a little bit regrettable that you would see someone with their foot cut off, with their foot amputated. But actually, there might actually be a difference in some degree of how life would be with a missing member like that. That would affect you on different levels that can be appreciated. However, sometimes people with an amputated member, they still have the sensation of having that member, it's been said. So you might say that they actually still have a foot, and that all of what you see as your physical foot might not be all of what your foot is. And even were that to be amputated, something of your real foot may still exist and abide. So that doesn't dispense with the fact that our feet may be necessary for thinking, even if had a foot been amputated. But what I think is that our feet are connecting with the earth in very profound ways. If somebody were to run out in front of you in traffic, like cross your path, sometimes you can actually feel a person crossing your path as you see them, and it may be obnoxious to you, even though they didn't truly interfere with you. And I think that's because as we're walking, I think we're engaging with the whatever magnetism or electricity the earth has. I think we're engaging with that as we walk and as we go up and down. So I was telling someone yesterday that as soon as humans are appreciated as a migratory species, historically speaking, and some people would say that's because of the weather patterns, that humans must migrate because of the weather patterns, but also the weather patterns might actually need us to migrate for them to be dynamic, because one, you could say that our breathing might affect the weather patterns just in terms of the atmosphere with sunsets, what I was referring to. But also, if our feet do have a magnetic component, a grounding component, our very affairs, our goings on, our marauding, it might actually affect the magnetism of the earth. And the weather patterns are a function of magnetism, especially like on the poles, emanating from the poles, the weather. Hot and cold might be more so effects than actual realities or properties in themselves. And we experience hot and cold, but the reality might be a deeper reality, and it is appreciated in terms of magnetism, polarity. Fundamentally, and it emanates from polarity. We can recognize that. But if our feet have a magnetic electrical component, our different goings on, our breathing, but also our walking up and down in different angles or different paths, running, jogging, walking, squatting, that might actually affect the magnetism of the earth and therefore the weather pattern. And that's a pet theory.